Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Summer of Action webinar, Writing for Change and Taking Local Action. If you are joining live with us today, we're so glad that you're here. And if you're watching the recording later, we're also happy to have you on there. So my name is Lindsay Garcia. I am the Director of Communications for the Evangelical Environmental Network. And I have just a few announcements to start us off before we kick off the webinar. So firstly, I wanted to let you know that this session is being recorded to be sent out in a follow-up email to everyone who registered. So to keep things running smoothly and to keep the recording clear for everyone, we just ask that you stay muted until you enter your breakout sessions later in the webinar. You are welcome to turn your camera on or off. We love to see your faces, but do whatever you are comfortable with. I also want to highlight a few things happening right now at EEN and also some things coming up soon. So, firstly, we are still anticipating the final passage of the America the Beautiful Act in Congress this summer. If you get emails from EEN, you've probably heard about this, or if you follow us on social media. This is a bipartisan piece of legislation that provides funding to America's national parks and public lands. If that's something you're interested in, you can scan the QR code on your screen, or you can visit creationcare.org/parks to send a message telling your policymakers why you care about protecting these unique and beautiful places. And I will put these links in the chat as well in just a minute. And then secondly, another opportunity to speak out. You can speak out with EEN right now about methane waste that misuses our energy resources and poses a threat to the health of our children and communities. You can learn more about this issue and send a message to key decision makers by scanning the QR code, or that link is creationcare.org/methane. I will put that in the chat as well. And then last announcement, I know we're still in the middle of July, but if you're like me, the fall can really sneak up on you. So we wanted to remind you to save the date for our next season of EEN's Beth Bond Memorial Book Club, which will begin on October 14th. If you haven't been a part of EEN's book club before, it's a virtual gathering where you read a pre-selected book about creation care and discuss it online with others. It's a great way to connect with people who are also passionate about creation care. And this year's season will be on Wednesday evenings, beginning October 14th and running for 5 weeks. So if you have wanted to join book club before but weren't able to because it was in the middle of the day, this year or this fall, we're going to be doing it in the evenings. So hopefully you can join us. We'll have more information on the book soon and a registration link to come. And with those announcements out of the way, I will pass it over to Kim to get us started.
Great, thank you, Lindsay. So my name is Kim Anderson, and I'm the Director of Member Mobilization. And as part of that role, I have the joy of helping you take action and equipping you to do so. So you can always feel free to reach out to me if there's an action you want to take and you're not sure exactly what step to take. This training today is designed to equip you to write for positive change, such as crafting influential letters to the editor and opinion pieces that address critical creation care topics. We'll also provide breakout groups geared toward helping you take local action for your community and God's creation. But before we talk about writing for change, let's talk about some principles of communicating about creation care. Next slide, please. So Katharine Hayhoe says that the most important thing that you can do is talk about it. And I think there's a lot of reasons why that's true. But first of all, it brings awareness. Second of all, it lets other people know that Christians care about creation care and caring for God's creation. And I think that's important for both our fellow Christians and for non-Christians to know. And then it also brings a legitimacy to the topic. I heard a statistic the other day that studies show that nearly 3/4 of adults support taking some kind of climate action, but they perceive that only 43% of their friends, families, and neighbors support climate action. So there's a disconnect there between 75% and 43%. So public opinion isn't the problem, it's public perception that's the problem. And I believe by talking about it, we can change public perception. So what makes talking about climate change so hard? It's a topic that people avoid. I know that when I was a child, I was told not to talk about religion and politics. Those are just like two topics that were off, that were, something that off the table. And so, Lindsay, if you want to hit down one more time, thank you. So talking about it in a way that addresses our shared values is a way to overcome these barriers. And so instead of thinking about it as talking about a topic that's difficult, let's think about it from a, like, what are the values that I share with the person that I'm talking to? And then how can I communicate that in a way that is relevant to them? So in the next slide, we see that George Marshall said, most people trust their neighbors and family members on climate change as much as they trust a climate scientist. So you are a trusted messenger in the circle of influence that you're a part of, and your voice is very important. So some principles that we want to share or keep in mind when we're sharing about climate change is, first of all, finding climate ground on climate. Start with the bond and shared values. So think about the person that you're talking to. And obviously, as a Christian, if you're talking to other Christians, you want to talk about what those values are. But sometimes we share values with other faiths as well. So you can start with those shared values as a Christian. And then you can also think about the shared values of the person that you're talking to. I, for example, am a gardener, and I like to grow food for my family, and I know where it's coming from and things like that. But if we go to the next slide, I know that so the next step is to connect and show why climate matters. As a gardener, I know that when I buy the seed packets, they've got the zones of when you can plant and when frost is and things like that. And that is changing. They've changed the zones in recent years because the average temperature changes and things like that. So the other thing is extreme weather can impact gardening. I, for a long time, I love fruit, and I wanted to have some, live on a property that had fruit. And we bought a property a few years ago that had several fruit trees on it. And last year we were blessed with so many peaches, we didn't know what to do. We were sharing them with, everybody that we could find. And it was just wonderful to have that bounty. This year we had a late frost, and every single one of the fruit trees on our property did not produce fruit this year. And some of them had been maturing, and we thought that we were going to have an overabundance of several other fruits this year, and that just didn't happen. And so for me, the extreme weather and changes to the weather patterns has impacted the food that I put on the plate of my family, and I'm able to share with others. So, you can talk about that from a shared value of other people. So finding common ground. And then finally, you want to inspire and demonstrate working solutions. It can get overwhelming when you start talking about, these like very large systemic problems in the world. And I think that if we demonstrate working solutions, people feel empowered and they feel like they can make a change. And so, I think that giving them solutions that they can take action on helps people feel better. I know that when I'm frustrated about something, I can sit there and I complain, or I can take action, and it feels so much better to do something about it. So you can take all of these principles into writing for change. Lindsay, next slide, please. So you can bring these principles into writing for change. One thing to keep in mind is that people are compelled by or captivated by stories. So you want to make it personal and compelling, no matter if you're talking to your neighbor or you're writing a letter to the editor. So we can bring all these principles into the writing that we do. This summer and always, there might be opportunities to write letter to the editor of your local paper or opinion pieces on various topics. If you're interested, let me know, and we can help you and support with that. And we're going to be sharing some tools during this webinar that you can use for that as well. So letters to the editor and op-eds, the biggest difference between them is the size. Letters to the editor tend to be shorter. 250 words is usually the max. There are some papers that have much shorter limits than that. So that's one thing you want to do when you start thinking about writing a letter is find that out, find your paper and find that information. You can respond to another article or a current event. It's one of the most read pages in the newspaper. And we do know that we've had many examples of policymakers who have read letters to the editor and have either written a handwritten note to the person that wrote it, or, have used even an op-ed by one of our former staff was used in Congress. And so we know that these are things that are shared and that are read by not only your peers, but also your policymakers. And finally, letters to the editor are easier to get published. Op-eds are longer. They can be 650 to 800 words, depending on the paper. You want to try to find a new, interesting, or unexpected topic. And just to give a quick example, about a year ago, the town that I live in had unearthed a time capsule from about 50 years ago. And there was a policymaker who was very renowned and well loved in this area, had written a letter at the time saying that he hoped that we would be free from fossil fuels as a country by the time that this time capsule was open. So I used that as a hook to talk about this topic in a letter to the editor that I wrote to my local paper. So you want to try to find, something cool like that gets people's attention. And you want to make sure your op-ed is going to be relevant in a few weeks. And then they're more challenging to get published, but you have a lot more opportunity to go into depth and share your topic. So we're going to focus a little bit on some tools that you can use. So there's a toolkit that Lindsay will put the link in the chat, but you want to, like I said, you want to start with your story, but you want to back that story up with local data. And here's a list of some of the organizations that we use that have some wonderful medical data that you can use to share your story. Things like the Asthma and Allergy Association, the American Lung Association. So share local statistics that are important and kind of back up your story. And again, there's a toolkit that you can use to help you with that as well. And then we also have created, if you go to the next slide, a toolkit for letters to the editor that you could use this summer to craft your letter to the editor. So there's a variety of different framings that you can use. You have the current event framing, so get to the point quickly, talking about something that's happening. You could talk, like the World Cup right now is something a lot of people are talking about. Things like that. Bring it somehow to something that's relevant to people. Make sure it's local. Explain the issue. Add some scripture. As a Christian, it's okay to put that in a letter to the editor and to share, and that way other people know that as Christians we care. And then at the end, making sure that you have a simple ask. And then another option is to respond to an article. So if you saw an article in the newspaper, you can go and reply to that through a letter to the editor. And there's a sample outline for if you would do that as well. And then finally, there's going to be a lot of opportunities throughout the summer. There already have been, but if you want to take action, you haven't already filled out this form. Once you do, we'll connect you to the resources and opportunities to do that. Just want to give a heads up that there are some like national, and then also depending on your state, some state actions that you can take. On methane is one that we might have an opportunity to speak up for this summer. We have a social media toolkit. So if you want to share some things on social media to kind of break the ice and share with people. I've had a lot of people, because of the things I share on social media, come and have conversations with me about well, help me understand this. This form you can pick what you want to take action on this summer, and we'll reach out and share those resources with you as well. So at this point, we're going to move on to our breakout groups. And the format for this is going to be, we do state work and some targeted state work in Ohio, Indiana, and Pennsylvania. So you can either, if you're in one of those states, you can join one of those breakout groups. And if you're not, I'll have some general information about how to take local action in the general breakout group. And so in a minute, we're going to do that, but I just wanted to pray us out, because we'll end in those groups and we won't come back to this main session. So let me pray for those groups and for after that time, and then we can go into the groups. Dear God, thank you so much for the opportunity to take action. I believe that you call us as Christians to speak up, however it is that we choose to do. And I just pray that you would equip us this summer to speak up for the things that are happening locally or federally or around the world. Just help us to be good stewards of your time and resources, and to take action as you want each of us individually to do. And I pray for these breakout groups and just ask that they can be a time of rich learning and discussion and getting to know one another. And we just pray that wonderful things would come out of this time. It's in your name we pray. Amen. Okay, so Lindsay's going to put some breakout groups up there, and you can pick which state or general one you want to attend, and then you'll be taken to your breakout groups, and we'll be done around 1, if not before, and your breakout group leader will send you off from there. So thank you, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful day. In this session, we're going to go into a little more depth on some of the things that we talked about. I'm curious. I know that we already put names in the chat. But for those of you that are left, if you don't mind just putting what state you're in so that I can kind of be aware of where you're all coming from. I saw the registration, so I have an idea, but I also, that can be very different on the day of. So okay, I know Larry's in Texas. Monique, you said you were in Florida. Okay. Catherine in Florida.
Sorry.
No, that's
Yes,
okay.
I'm in Florida.
Joanna from California. We've got the span of the United States here. So, okay, so I was going to start out by doing a little bit of a deeper dive on writing for change. Again, there are some tools that we can share with you after this session that will help as well. And then you can always feel free to reach out to me if you want to write a letter to the editor. We are trying to recruit people to write letters to the editor on methane and then other topics this summer. So if you're interested in doing that, you can reach out to me and I can help you with that. I know that some people have never done that before and it can be intimidating. So I'm happy to help you. Okay, so some tips for getting started when you're writing a letter to the editor or a public opinion piece is you want to know what your ask is, think about what it is that's important to you. There's so many topics from a creation care standpoint that you can talk about. So, think about what your ask is, select your target publication. Is it a local paper? I live kind of about an hour and a half east of Pittsburgh. So I have a couple of options. I could try for a bigger publication like Pittsburgh. There's a state publication that will publish things for anybody in the state of Pennsylvania. I also have a couple local papers. And so I just want to think about what your message is and which is the best publication. And if you're doing an op-ed, which is the longer type of opinion piece, you want to draft a pitch. So usually you would send the op-ed to them as well as this is why I think this is important in an email. So, and then also it's okay to follow up. I've had a couple of instances where I think these editors that we're sending things to can be busy and they don't always get to it right away. And so sometimes I think if you follow up, you don't want to be annoying, but I might just send one extra email like, hey, just wanted to make sure you saw this. And on a couple of occasions that has helped me get something published. Next slide, please. Finding a publication, Google is your best friend. You can look up a paper or go to a target website. You can look for their submission information page. Usually they have, if you just search, I'll do this all the time, letter to the editor, Pittsburgh, whatever paper. They'll have like either a form or they'll have information on how to email the letter to the editor or the op-ed to them. And then you can pitch it to them. You want to be short, sweet, and also persistent, and also make it as easy as possible for the person that would be receiving it. And one of the ways to do that is with an op-ed, which are most often sent by email. You could put the pitch at the top and then copy the body of the op-ed into the email, but then also attach it. Give them as many options as possible. And then next slide, please. So once you've found the publication that you want, you also want to find out, what is their limit, their word limit and things like that. I know that Jack Johnson, who is in the Ohio breakout group, wrote a letter to the editor a few years ago, and the Columbus Dispatch has a very short limit. And then also if you refer to an article of theirs, you need to include the whole topic, and that counts as your words. And so it can be a little challenging to fit everything in, but there's an art to it. And I like to start with whatever I want to say and then kind of just trim it down to the size that I need. So there's a few different examples. First is the response to an article. You always, regardless of the format, want to establish your identity. Do you care as a mom? Do you care as a Christian? What are the, what is the shared value that you want to share? You want to address something from the original article, and then have an invitational and not combative closing. I think it's easy sometimes to, my personality is to want to be combative, but I have learned that doesn't usually sway people, and it only might help people be cemented into the things that they already believe. So you want to make sure that you have an invitational closing so that people know how to take action and what steps that they can take. And then next, Lindsay, if you can go to the next slide, is a current event. So the example here is, I believe it's one that was written by Dean Van Faro, who is in the Ohio breakout session, is leading the Ohio breakout session. His son has asthma, so he kind of starts with like why it matters to him, and starts with a compelling story that makes people, gets people emotions and gets them connected. He makes it local by bringing in some statistics about asthma in Ohio, and then he includes some scripture and why it's important to him. And then at the end has that simple non-combative ask. And then last slide or next slide. Highlight an issue or proposed bill. So, in this one, you might be talking about a specific bill, whether it's on the state or local or federal level. You want to explain why it's important to you, make sure you include scripture, introduce the issue or the bill. Again, make it local, and then have a simple ask. And you'll probably see a theme throughout all of these that you both want to make it personal and then share some local statistics, and then also have an ask. So that's kind of the general layout that you might use, but these are some examples that you can use, and we'll share these slides afterwards. So these are some examples that you can kind of draw from if you are having trouble with like how to structure your op-ed. And then we also have a tool that Lindsay shared in the main session, but it's an LTE toolkit. It specifically kind of focuses on methane, or the example is methane, but you could use it for any local or state or federal issue that you care about. So those are some resources that you can use. Next slide, Lindsay. And then I shared this earlier, but ways that you can share some local action. These are some organizations, and again, we've got a tool for this, so kind of explains each of these and some more, and what you could learn from each of these publications, or resources, and how you might want to bring them in. And then next slide, Lindsay. So I wanted to give some examples of some local statistics. So this is from Climate Central, which is a resource that has amazing things, and they can create these slides, which you wouldn't necessarily need for a letter to the editor, but if you're asked to talk at your church or something along those lines, they have some resources that you can use that are very local. So you put in your where you live, the nearest city to you, and then there's all different kinds of tools. Like, so for example, this one expresses that between 1970 and 2024, there are 15 more hot summer days compared to 1970. So that means that like a week ago in Pennsylvania, we had some really hot weather. Again, I'm a gardener. It was a bit too much to go out that week and do much gardening unless you did it in the morning or the evening, which doesn't always work. And so, it can impact our lives. And I think it's a statistic that helps people kind of see that changes are happening. So that's one. And then Lindsay, if you can go to the next one. This is, again, so pregnancy heat risk days between 20 and 24, the average annual days above 85.1 degrees Fahrenheit. There were 10 days added by our changing climate. And this can be risky for people that are pregnant and for lots of other people. It can be risky for mothers and then their babies, and then also, for lots of other people. one example is Lyme disease is increasing, and especially in places like Pennsylvania. And part of it is that ticks are able to live longer and things like that. And so my husband recently was out doing some yard work and ended up with a tick bite. And I can speak from personal experience that can be very scary. So having warmer days is not only difficult for people that are pregnant, but also for all of us. So, and then next slide, please. This one talks about some heat risks during pregnancy. The extreme heat kind of has increased risk of preterm birth, stillbirth, and low birth weight, all of which can impact a child throughout their whole life. And then also for the mother, hypertension and gestational diabetes, and then also maternal hospitalizations and mortality. So, this has a real impact on people's bodies. Next slide, please. One topic, there are many topics we, like Lindsay shared earlier, you have the opportunity to share your national park story, but one thing that we talk a lot about at EEN and is impactful for many of the states of the people that are in this breakout group is methane. So methane has more than 80 times the warming power of carbon dioxide in the first 20 years. So it's like a big punch to the climate, and it can have a big impact. And if we were able to bring down our methane emissions, we would be able to have a big impact on our weather. So in the oil and gas industry, the leading source of leading industrial source of methane pollution. It also, along with it, are volatile organic compounds, which can worsen asthma and other respiratory diseases, cause heart disease, lead to early death. So there are health implications. And then also it's released alongside benzene, which can increase the risk of cancer, cause immune system damage and developmental problems. So living close to a well is correlated with early risk of death for those over 65. And there are other statistics as well that living near an oil and gas facility can be impactful. So if you can go to the next slide. So there's a great tool called the Oil and Gas Threat Map. Statistics show that living within a half mile of an oil and gas well or infrastructure is correlated with negative health impacts. And a lot of data actually shows that can be extended to 5 to 10 miles. So a half mile is a very conservative estimate, but living within that half mile are 17.3 million Americans, 3.7 million students who attend over 12,000 schools within a half mile, and then 5.7 million people, threatened people of color. So you can find where you are on the oil and gas threat map. It goes down to the county level. You can look at it from a state level. So that's a great place where you could share statistics about, what's happening on a local level. Next slide, please. A lot of gas is wasted in the United States and around the world. There are leaks from pipelines. There are abandoned and orphaned wells. So what has happened is at some points in history, you didn't have to register if you put a well on your property and things like that. And then over time, when that well wasn't needed anymore, it might have been plugged, it might have not been plugged the right way. And then there are also ones that are owned by companies. And when the life of the well is over, depending on the state, there are regulations about what you have to do. And in some states, if you pay money before you drill the well, then you're not responsible for it afterwards. Then the state picks up that burden, or the taxpayers, really. And so, and then there's also active wells. And so, got some examples of those. The picture in the top right-hand corner is an example of OGI imagery, which a lot of times, like when you look at the pictures of these wells or pipelines, you don't see anything happening, but there are special cameras that allow you to see that there are emissions coming off of them. Methane and natural gas are invisible to the eye, and so there are cameras that can help us see that there is emissions in places where you might not have thought so otherwise. Next slide, please. So some statistics about how much methane is wasted. So if we were able to reduce methane leaks by 80%, we would reduce 58 million tons of methane emissions, 16 million tons of toxic volatile organic compounds, or 600,000 tons of hazardous air pollution. So basically, what this means is there like these pipelines or these wells and things like that are leaking. If we were able to curb that, we would have a lot less that was leaking. And there is some legislation that is proposed that we'll talk about a little bit that would eliminate a lot of this waste if we were able to. For example, in some states, they do something that's called flaring. So basically, if there's a little bit of methane left over that's too hard to capture, they'll just burn it. And I visited North Dakota a few years ago, and there's a lot of fracking that happens in that area. And you would drive down the road and see these like pipes come out of the ground with it almost looked like a match, the little fire on top of it, and you would see them go off for miles, just burning methane. If we were able to capture that instead, we could not only provide jobs for people, because there's economic value in that, but then we also wouldn't be wasting gas, and we could put that back into the energy needs that we have. And so yeah. So then if you can go to the next slide. So on the federal level, there's been a rule that was proposed in 2024 by the EPA. They went through a comment period and a research period and all those things, and then proposed this rule. The next step was to be that the individual states, especially those that have, some of them, have more oil and gas infrastructure than others, the states would put in a state implementation plan. And that has been, the timing on that, first of all, has been rolled back, but the whole rule might be rolled back. So there might be an opportunity to submit comments on that later this summer. So if you're interested in that, you can email me, or you can fill out the form and then maybe put that in the comments. And so, keep that in mind if that's something that you might want to do. Basically, there's two ways you can do it. One is you write up statement and you submit it online through the federal, there's a federal website. The other option is that you can register to testify. Usually they give you like a 3 to 5 minute window, and you write something up ahead of time and then you present it. And you get to share, I care as a mom, I care as a Christian, I live near oil and gas infrastructure, and it worries me about my health and things like that. So you can share that, and I think that can have a big impact. And then on the state level, if you're in a state that has a lot of methane pollution, you can advocate for a state implementation plan. I know that in some states, I know that Larry's on in Texas, there are states that are proposing such rules, and they might have their own comment period on their specific state rule. So you can feel free to reach out to me if you want to see what's happening in your state and might want to take action on that level, or if you want to take action on the federal level. And then next slide. Opportunities to take action. The other thing you could do is write a letter to the editor, or an op-ed about methane. Again, we have the toolkit that was shared earlier. I'm keeping Lindsay very busy sharing links. So there's a toolkit. I put PA fact sheet, but there's actually a general fact sheet about just methane in general. And then also the local data fact sheet or toolkit could help you pull in some resources or some information that's relevant to the area that you live. And then again, like I mentioned, you can testify at a public hearing, either at the state or the federal level, if a rule is proposed. So feel free to reach out to me. My email is kim@creationcare.org if you are interested in doing that, and on either of those, and I can work with you to help support you in that. When we do have opportunities to testify at the federal level, we create a toolkit that has information and kind of all the background information that you need, and will help you craft that. So we try to make it as easy as possible, because sometimes these I think they can feel overwhelming. Most people that once they've done it the first time said, I think that felt overwhelming, but really it was not that hard of a lift. And we try to make it as easy as possible for you. And again, you can use those resources as well for any issue on the state or local or federal level that you want to comment on. Well, we've only got a couple minutes left, and I think it would be good to pray us out. And I do want to reiterate, my email is in the chat if you have any questions about, any of these opportunities that we've talked about, or you think you might want to write a letter to the editor this summer, anything like that. Definitely feel free to reach out to me, and we can work together via email or Zoom or whatever works to help get the word out, because I think the more that we get the word out, the more that people will believe that others want to take climate action as well. So I will go ahead and pray. Dear God, we thank you for today. We thank you for these people that came to this part of the session, and just ask that you can bless them and help each one of them know the type of action you want them to take. Put on their hearts the issue that they care about, the issue that's happening in their state or their community, that you would have them speak up about. And we just pray that as we do this, that we would be a witness to other Christians and to non-Christians around us. Thank you so much for being an amazing God. Amen.